Most people assume healing fails because they picked the wrong treatment. Well, what if healing fails because the body is not in a physiological state that allows healing to happen at all? Today, we're going to look at why people can do all the right things and still not improve, and what actually has to change first for healing to take place. To help us break this down, we are joined by Dr. Bob Levine, a resident wellness expert and the voice behind Healing from the Inside Out in the Wellness Wave Club's Wellness Circle Facebook group. One of Dr. Bob's specialization is helping people understand why symptoms persist and what it takes to create the internal conditions where the body can actually recover. Now, this is not about motivation or positive thinking. This is about the nervous system state that determines whether your body can repair tissue, regulate inflammation, and resolve pain. So, Dr. Bob, as we begin, healing depends on the internal state of the body, not just the treatment used. What would need to shift first?
Wow. This question could be answered 1,000 different ways because every person is different. Everybody's got their own history, their own automatic patterns of life. And so this is a challenging question. I'm going to give you an answer though. Okay. In my opinion, one of the primary roadblocks to healing, if you discount, lousy nutritional plan, bad, poor relations, is stress. Stress is the number one thing that gets in people's way from healing. So people can do every other thing really well. They can start eating a great diet. They can start getting exercise. They can lose a few pounds. If they're still experiencing the stress of life, these automatic stress patterns, it's going to get in the way of them healing, and it's going to retard the rate at which they can heal. So that's what I say has to shift first and foremost is the stress has got to be interrupted. These stress reactions are automatic because if they weren't automatic, we would just say, hey, okay, I'm stress free from now on. This is great. I love it. But doesn't work that way. When the stress is there, it's there, and that's automatic. And so,
All right. So we appreciate that, Bob. And so appreciate that perspective. Looking forward into spending more time diving into that and expanding upon it. Before we do so, I want to say to our audience, welcome and to WellWave Now. This is where timeless wisdom lights your wellness path. It's modern insight to help you live better and hopefully do so for longer.
Yeah, so that's a different way of thinking, though. Many people might blame the treatment, right, Dr. Bob, and that's stalling their healing. But you're saying the real issue could be their own body not allowing that healing to occur. So when someone is tried multiple methods, different therapies, and nothing seems to be working, I think you said that stress is the main blocker for healing. What do you do about that?
that's the trick, isn't it?
Yep.
So when people think of stress, most people understand that the stress reactions are like a fight or flight phenomenon where the central nervous system, the whole nervous system is activated, the sympathetic nervous system, adrenaline, noradrenaline, it starts flooding the body. And then you get cortisol rising. So a lot of things are going on physiologically when stress is occurring. What's really dangerous is when people don't realize that they're expressing stress. Stress is expressed from inside. Most people don't look at it like that. They think the stress comes from external circumstances, and that's what causes the stress. Well, those are triggers, but the cause of the stress is inside. It's how we react to it. I like to use the example, somebody who's afraid of flying. They're stressed out to the maximum. They don't want to get on a plane. It's just a terrible experience. Somebody who has no issue with flying. They have no stress. They're on the airplane. They're having a good time. It's fine. So it's not the circumstance. It's how we respond. We react automatically to the circumstance that makes the biggest difference. Everybody has a different history. And so they're going to react differently to different circumstances. That's why it's so challenging. I applaud everybody in the healthcare community because we all have great intentions. Physicians, nurses, chiropractors, massage therapists, everybody, mind body experts, traditional oriental medicine. We all have the same objective. We want to help people get better. It's always the same. So the question, we have our tools that we use. But the question is, what's going to be right for that person who's in front of us, and can we as practitioners identify the way in which they react to circumstances to generate internal stress that they're oftentimes not even aware they're generating. So the body's on this hamster wheel. The hamster's rolling around, stress is being expressed, and we're taking a medicine, and maybe we're taking a pharmaceutical to help rebalance the body. Maybe we're getting a massage or acupuncture or some herbs or whatever it is. A mind, brain, body connection visit. The question is, what's going to unlock the internal generation of stress? What's going to help a person interrupt that? So that's one of the first things that I do anyway when I work with people, because people who are in chronic pain, or they have anxiety, or they have sleep disturbance, or they have relationships that are messed up and their communication isn't working as well as they'd like it to. We got to look at, how do we interrupt these automatic stress? How do we teach them how to interrupt these automatic stress reactions? I don't know. That answer is probably all over the place, but it's kind of the way I operate, the way I view things, and I have a track record of clinical data to show that the modalities that I use and the approach that I use are highly effective.
So how hard is that then for a provider, let's say a traditional PCP, primary care provider? They have two people following the same protocols, but they have completely different outcomes.
It's hard. I mean, I don't envy them. I mean, doctors are not given enough time with patients. They have to work really fast. They got all kinds of charts to review, and they've got notes to take, and and then they have this person in front of them, and they don't have time to take the person's health history, life history, what's going on. You were hit by a car. Oh, you got divorced. Oh, you were abused. Oh, all these things are happening to people, and the practitioners need to have the time to be able to explore what's going on, because that's the key to unlocking the issue. And so I really have a lot of empathy for all practitioners, because that's what we all want to do. We all want to unlock the issue. We want to help the person rebalance themselves. Somebody comes to see a practitioner, one thing's for sure, they're out of balance in some way, shape, or form. They're out of balance. So how do we get them back into balance, back into a healthful state? And to do that,
Yeah.
we have to explore the life of the person. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. Well, so just thinking about that, if you think about, it's not too long ago we had Jenny Cohen on with us and talking about somatic healing and things, energy. I think it was her talking about energy being locked in different parts of the body to need to be released. And then we had our Ayurvedic guy on, Victor Briere, talking about a need that he likes to talk to people about the whole lifestyle. So even this, Bob, where you're from Massachusetts again, and then throughout this time in Midwest, and now you're out here in the talking, with the wooden nips, talking about the reason my pain and my elbow won't heal is because I had a car accident. So you gotta bring this out and talk to bring it in context with Jenny and Victor and what you guys are talking about. Why does this car wreck I had cause me not to be able to get healing in my elbow 30 years later?
That's a great question, Tim. And I don't usually say that very much. The question is great. This one is great. The reason why is because it leads me into something very important that I would like to bring up, which is it's automatic patterns that people develop. So somebody gets in a car accident, smashes their elbow, they're immobilized for a while. I had an immobilization event. I separated my shoulder degree at total separation. The shoulder joint was ripped off the collarbone, and I was in a sling for 6 weeks. And at that time, that was, I'm a little bit of an older guy. And when we were doing sports then, we didn't have all the great physical therapy and interventions and training. Nobody told me, hey, it'd be a really good idea if it's your shoulder that's the problem. So you can actually work your elbow, leave your shoulder in position. You could squeeze a ball. You could do movements that don't impact the healing of the shoulder. I didn't do anything. When I took that sling off 6 weeks later, my arm was locked. And I tried to straighten it. It must have taken me, I'm going to just say 30 minutes before I could get it to straighten out. That was an automatic pattern. That's a really severe example of a pattern. But, somebody trips over something and they start limping a certain way because their foot hurts, their ankle hurts, and then they get out of balance. And then that pattern locks in place. So one of the things that I deal with are these automatic patterns that people have. The stress response is just one thing. It's really critical. But then there's all these dysfunctional movement patterns that people have. I like to deal with the physical activities of daily living, the repetitive movements of daily living, as I call them, the walking, 5 to 15,000 steps a day. The average person takes between 30,000 and 50,000 repetitive movements every day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, brushing their teeth, they're towel drying, they're all these things, they're eating with everything's done one-sided in an imbalanced way. The way people sit in the chairs, the way they run, the way they go up and down stairs, the way they sit and stand, the way they bend and reach, people don't understand about muscle reciprocity. You got the bicep and you got the tricep. And if the tricep doesn't release all the way, you can't do a full flexion of the bicep. In other words, the bicep will just lock up here because the tricep is not letting go. And you can't straighten your arm all the way if the bicep doesn't let go. That's why you see weightlifters with arms that look like this, because they're not doing full range of motion. So all of these different movement patterns, repetitive movements of daily living, have to be dealt with. So I deal with that pretty early on in somebody's treatment, especially of chronic pain. And there's more to it than that, but I'll pause there.
So there's people that have been kind of locked into these repetitive patterns. They've gotten the stress, and so they're living in that world of not being able to get into the parasympathetic. So what
The
do you look?
parasympathetic tone, yeah, I get that. Yeah, everybody's into
Yeah,
that now.
so that's
You
right. So
gotta activate the parasympathetic nervous system. You gotta get that vagal nerve going. It causes relaxation. Okay, go ahead.
yeah.
I find it very funny.
Michael, was it Michael LeBaron, one of our wellness heroes? She said that was her key, was getting into that parasympathetic, and that's what she teaches people on that. But
No, yeah, no, that's no. By the way, I'm not knocking it. It's important.
uh,
It's important. The vagal tone is really important. The vagus nerve is part of the parasympathetic, which opposes the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight. The parasympathetic nervous system is opposing it, and it calms the whole being down. The reason why I laugh is because people deal with trying to get into the parasympathetic arena
Mhm.
over minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes, and I say it can be done in like 1 second. So I teach people how to do it really quickly. That's all.
What are the signs that people know? Oh, I'm sitting there and I've got digestive issues, and what's the sign to me that I'm living in that pattern stress world versus anything else?
Well, if you have a symptom and you've been around the block with a lot of different practitioners, physicians, whoever you've gone to, and nothing's helped, nothing's been happening, then you're stuck in it, because we ought to be able to go to one practitioner. And if that practitioner is really good at what they do and they understand they need to unlock the patterns that you have that are causing, especially with stress, and maybe the diet is off, that are causing GI problems. But the practitioners really have to read a person. Like, how do we tell when somebody is out of balance? And so, so I teach people something very different. And I've never even talked about this with you guys. Can I talk about it?
Fine with me.
Depends on what it is. Yeah, I know Tim's like, I don't know, Bob. Depends on what it is. Okay.
Tim has the ability to edit, so go right ahead, Dr.
Exactly.
Bob.
And he can shut me down pretty fast. So that's good. So no, I teach people about what I call the way of being that is expressed, the way of being. So the way of being that's expressed comes from within. Everybody, all of us are expressing a way of being every moment of every day of every. And we can read that if we're trained. And I'm trained, and I train people in reading that. So, Tim, when somebody comes to me and they got GI issues, I'm just going to talk to them for a few minutes, and I can tell if they're being anxious, that's a way of being. If they're being afraid, that's a way of being. If they're being stubborn, if they're being resistant, I can read that really fast, because I know I studied it for years, and I've trained a lot of people, and I've got it down to a kind of a science. I guess it's not really a science, but again, I have clinical data to prove that the modalities I use are very effective. But in any case, so you can read a person by the way of being. If somebody comes to you and they've had trauma for a lot of their life, they're going to talk to you a certain way. They got trauma. So you got to do trauma release with them, and you got to figure out how to do it relatively quickly. I don't believe you can take like 3 years to do trauma release. I don't. And also, I want to say one thing to everybody out there listening, is that anybody who's focused on things that happened in the past, that's where their attention is. It's on the past. And so it takes away from their attention on their future, which is really where they're going and where they might want to go, but they can't even construct that if the focus is in the past on the traumas that happened. So we need a rapid way of helping people recognize that trauma happened, and then allowing that trauma to be behind them so they can actually have a clean future slate. They call it the true future vision, what they really want, even if they don't know how to produce it. It's really important to focus on what we really want, even when we're not sure how to produce it, because we'll figure it out. There's a saying that almost every practitioner I've ever run into uses, and it's called, and every trainer, whatever we focus on expands. So if we're focusing on past traumas that happened, guess what? They're expanding. They're in our view. They're dominating us. So if I can't help somebody release trauma in really quickly, maybe a couple sessions, no more, then I'm going to send them somewhere else because I'm not getting the
Okay.
job done.
All
If the
right. So
trauma is not released, then then everything else doesn't matter, really.
It's
so
like
I want
telling
to see.
somebody, don't focus on, don't think about an elephant. Think about anything else but an elephant. But of course, you're going to think about the elephant.
Exactly. Elephant. You see elephants everywhere. You go to the bathroom, it's an elephant in there.
Well, that's because they're not following the law of substitution. That means as soon as one thought comes up, I still have the ability to substitute another one very quickly.
I'm so glad you said that, Tim, because that's what's crazy is that, when I talked about ways of being.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, now the way of being always drives the action, and the action produces the result. So if somebody is expressing a way of being like angry, they might hit somebody or yell at somebody. And the reason why actions occur over time. So if I'm being angry, I'm going to over time yell at somebody. Or like my dad used to do, I'm going to leave the room so I don't blow up at somebody. He just didn't want to expose us to his anger. So his action was leaving the room, but it didn't always work that way. So then he would yell. But, my point is that the way of being always drives the action that's happening over time. Now, guess what about thinking, Tim? Thoughts occur over time. Thoughts are actions. It's the act of thinking. Like I'm thinking that our background right now, mine shows up in a different way than yours shows up. So I'm thinking over time. So so when I teach people a technique called instantaneous thought shifting. And it relates to identifying the way of being that's expressing in that moment that's driving the unwanted thoughts. Because thought substitution is really hard when you don't understand that what's driving the original thought in the first place. And
Okay.
then we're
So
trying to, yeah,
so
okay.
all right. So we're going to see if how that relates to pain and healing in a few minutes. But right now, we're going to take a little time for a break with Breck. That's what we're calling this, Breck's break.
Hey, break with Breck. I like it too. That works. That's excellent. Yeah, thank you. I want to talk about Brain IQ Pain Eraser. It's a roll-on used by our very own Tim Daniels. After years of knee damage as a D1 athlete and an avid exerciser, he gets relief with Brain IQ Pain Eraser. It delivers targeted, instant relief. It uses advanced nanotechnologies combined with powerful nutrition, natural ingredients that absorbs quickly right where he needs it. No pills, no mess. Just roll it on and get back to moving. It's ideal for the lower back, your knee pain, shoulder pain, joint discomfort, and everyday aches and pains. It makes it a great option for active adults, busy professionals, or anyone that's just tired of pain slowing them down. So you can try it. It's easy and effective. It's called Brain IQ Pain Eraser. It works where and when you need it. So we will leave a link in the show notes for you. Tim, back to the
Nice.
show.
So thank you, Breck. So let's tie this up. That little eraser gives me relief to I consider some ongoing trauma in the body. Now, Bob, let's take it when what happens when pain persists, imaging, anything else, there's no active tissue damage.
Yeah.
But how does that relate to the stress impacting the issue, the holding on to the patterns, or holding on to the trauma, or to anything else? Why do people experience that pain when the image is saying, hey, there's nothing there?
So, yeah, great question. Why do people experience pain when imaging can't find anything? Some friends of mine, when I worked at Henry Ford Health System, neurosurgeons, they told me that 90% of the people that came to them with their imaging were not candidates for surgery because the images didn't show that they needed it. And then you've got the study that was done years ago where they took the everyday people, I don't remember the exact ages, 30 to 50 age range, years old. And they took those people and imaged them. They had no pain. It's pain. And then they took those images and they gave them to orthopedists orthopedic surgeons and said, where would you say this pain should be from this image? And so the orthopedic surgeons and the neurosurgeons looked at the images and they said, oh, well, look at that. That's a compressed disc right there. It's going to be pushing on that nerve and it's going to show up as pain here. And they described all the pain that all those people should have, and yet they had zero pain, which that study demonstrated that the imaging doesn't necessarily correlate with the pain. And what's interesting is, if somebody goes to see the doctor because they have a pain that came on, and then the doctor does an image and says, "Oh, look at that! You got a compressed disc over here, protruding disc. That's why you're having that pain." But the thing is, they didn't have the pain a week ago, or a month ago, or a year ago, and it's not like the compressed or nerve happened overnight. It usually does not, and it doesn't happen that way. So my point is that there's a big disconnect between the feeling of pain and what the image may or may not show. And when the image doesn't show anything, that supports what I believe, and that is that all pain is neuromuscular, soft tissue, fascia, the nerve entrapment, trigger points, all kinds of different ways in which the nerves can be affected by their internal milieu, their environment, where they are, to the pathway that they're on. Are they getting compressed? Are they getting irritated? Is the nerve on all the time? Is the muscle on all the time? If I hold my arm up like this throughout the whole show, I could probably do that throughout the whole show. But by the end of the show, my arm is going to be wasted because, number one, this is called sensory motor amnesia. I can't sense that my arm is breaking down over time. It's happening as I do this. I'm in pain. The neuromuscular system is impacted by this. Funny story is when my first son was born, he was born by C-section because he had a head that was about this big, unlike mine, which is really small.
Please.
And he wasn't coming out. He was turned, he's face up, and it was all wrong. So my wife got a C-section. She was in bed for a long time, and I carried him around like a little football from the day he was born for a couple of months. And he watched everything. I did everything. My arm was fine for that whole time. And then I went to bed one night. I woke up the next morning. I could not move my arm. I couldn't lift up an empty glass because I couldn't sense. We call it sensory motor amnesia. It's like we can't sense what's happening with the tissue, and I was wiped out. It took me months to rehabilitate that. But now, if I hold something like this, or I hold this, and I can feel it after a couple minutes. It's, oh, there it is, and then I can put it down or change or something like that. So all of these factors are at play with people, and when the image doesn't show anything, it's going to be a soft tissue phenomenon. And it could be related to some of these repetitive movements of daily living, these dysfunctional imbalances, unbalanced patterns of movement that cause muscles to be contracted and constrained over time, and it stays that way. And people wonder, why does somebody's shoulder lock up, the so-called frozen shoulder? Well, they bang themselves and then they don't lift their arm for a while, and then it's like harder and harder to lift. It becomes a frozen shoulder. Well, those are so easy to release because it's a neuromuscular problem, and the neuromuscular system is responsive to various manipulations, let's say.
So let's look at the reverse to Tim's question. And now, how does the nervous system amplify that pain when someone stays in a chronic stress state?
Well, the nervous system is going to experience pain when it's called for, when there's pain. I mean, except when people can turn off or minimize the sensation of pain, like with athletes. I mean, when I played college football, wow, we'd smash into people. We had to turn off all sensations. If we allowed ourselves to feel everything, we would have said, I'm on the sidelines. I'm done. I quit. It's not going to happen. We had to just keep, tuning down our sensitivity. And when I finished my playing days after college, it took me years to get back to sensing again because I couldn't sense. So, people have different reactions. Some people that they call them hypochondriacs. They're not hypochondriacs. They're experiencing pain. They have a lot of sensitivity to pain. Now, for like fibromyalgia, that's like a catch-all diagnosis for people where they can't identify what's going on. But I consider like reflex sympathetic dystrophy. That's where there's incredible sensitivity. You can barely touch the skin. There's so much discomfort, and or fibromyalgia, something like that. To me, that's hypersensitivity of the neuromuscular system. And I've had really good success helping tone that down for people with fibromyalgia. So they're not experiencing every little thing or reflex sympathetic dystrophy. They're not experiencing how the pain of it because they have to do a reset. And so, we want to be able to reset the neuromuscular system in any way we can. And that's why I always talk about multimodal therapies. You guys probably get tired of me bringing that up, but it's so critical because we have to deal with, the status of the neuromuscular system, that we have to deal with the nutrition. We have to deal with the relationships that people have. We have to look at how they are communicating. We have to think about all these different factors that go into repetitive movements of daily living. I have a technique called effective muscle release, which take muscles that are in excess contraction, like here would be the bicep. It's not allowing the arm to straighten. And I have effective muscle release techniques that can allow, we re-educate those muscles to like let go, release, and let the arm straighten. And those happen, those patterns can be resolved really fast, which is fun. It's really fun to do that. Anyway.
Yeah. So related to this, Bob, I just thinking through this, and you gave a lot of aspects there. Sometimes, I think as I reflect on it, that maybe it's the amount of continuity in the pain that is causing the nervous system or something to amplify it, right? For example, I'll give you something here recently. Place I go for my water exercise and swimming. The heater in the pool wasn't working. They said we're gonna fix it as soon as we can. So the first day I hop in there, oh, no big deal. I can handle this. I can do it. Second day I see the sign. Oh, no big deal. I can handle this. I can do it. About the 8th or ninth time, the water temperature hasn't changed. I've been in there again, and I said, "Oh, gosh, I don't know if I can take this."
Tim,
So
you keep leading me into these great with questions, but go ahead, finish up.
no, go ahead. So take it. That's really the question. Is it what's
Is there an amplification system? Is there some kind of
right?
amplification system? So, okay, personally, I don't believe so. The
Mhm,
amplification system is not a physiological amplification system. It's a mind, brain, body connection system that amplifies because it's the same temperature, it's the same you're just 8 days later and you're jumping in the same water. And you're saying to yourself, in your future vision, which I'm going to call a corrupt future vision, is I don't know if I can take this
mhm,
because the water is really cold. And
mhm,
so when you go to get in the water, your reaction is different from day one, where it's like, I can do this.
mhm,
Because your future vision, the true future vision, not the corrupt one, was, yeah, I can do this. This is no big deal. And people need to understand that whatever they're thinking and saying is likely to happen, just like what you said there. It's like, I don't know if I can do this. And then, yeah, of course you can't. And of course it's going to be more uncomfortable. And you're going to go to, and not you, but somebody will go to their doctor and go, the first day was okay, but by the 8th day, man, my body is messed up. It's so painful for me to go in the water and I don't know what
mhm.
to do about it. Okay, let's give you some pain meds. Let's give you a Band-Aid, so you can get in the water. But, um, unfortunately, pharmaceuticals are used differently than I believe they were designed. I
So
believe
what
pharmaceuticals.
would you do, and what do you advocate the persons that you do should do? I can tell you what I did finally, but
What'd you do? What'd you do?
well, no, go first. What would you advocate? What would you advocate that the person do differently so they they're not experiencing it any differently?
Yeah, well, first of all, most people would say, well, find a heated swimming pool. They would say,
Right.
change the circumstance. But I don't believe in changing circumstances unless they're really, really challenging.
Mhm,
Like if somebody's in an environment that is unhealthy, serious problems, maybe there's some abuse going on, who knows.
mhm,
So I say work with the circumstances until you decide that you don't want to work with them anymore. So the thing is, for me, I live in Florida and in the wintertime, there can be weeks at a time where a pool is 70 degrees. And I would go in the pool every day at 70 degrees. But I didn't like tippy toe in because that's like, oh, this is too much. I can't tippy toe in. I would just jump in and swim a couple of lanes and that'd be great. It'd be wonderful. I'd be assimilated or I would be, accommodated to the temperature. So
Acclimated, yeah.
Acclimated, thank you for that, Breck, thank you. Yeah, so because my true future vision was this water's cold and I'm gonna love it, and I loved it. It was great, but I knew I had to jump in the way I said, "I have to find a way to do this. I'm gonna jump in and I'm gonna swim." And when I jumped in, it's going, "Wow, this is cold." And then I swam a length and then it's like, "Okay, this is really great." And I loved being in it. It was wonderful. So whatever we want to have happen, if we're willing to focus on what we truly want, even if we don't know how to produce it. And I never knew every day when I jumped in, it would be okay. I didn't know. How would I know? Maybe that would be the day where I would say, oh my gosh, I thought it would be okay. I can't take this. But no, I
And
focused
that
on
that
how I,
was going to be my question to Tim. Were you thinking about, day 8 hyperthermia? What was in your mind that made it so
Well,
different?
was like, well, what made different was they said they're fixing this as fast as possible. I said, well, I can take this for a day or so. I can take this for a day, but when it goes on and on and on, can I say? But then I just kind of did similar to what Dr. Bob did said there. I just said, okay, I did it. I did it the first day one,
yeah, right.
and came out just fine. It is day 15 now. I can still do it. Hopped on in and just went to work.
Yeah, there you go. And it was fine. It was good, right? It was good.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Yeah.
fun.
And people don't understand, a lot of people don't understand the importance of, um, the concept that what we focus on expands, and maybe there's things we don't want to be focused on. And maybe what we want to do is focus on that which we really truly want. And it's really important for people to know what you really truly want, even if you don't know how to get there. You don't know the pathway yet. You don't, the thing is, when you're focused on that result, everything will start to line up. You'll find the pathway. You'll talk to people a certain way. You'll ask certain questions. Because if we say, I could never do that, well, of course, we'll never be able to do that, but if we, yeah, so
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I was a swimmer. I was on the swim team, and I thought I was pretty good athlete, and there was this opportunity to go, do an open water swim a mile in a lake, and this is in the high Sierras in California. So it's all snow runoff. It's cold
cold.
water. And I can't remember, there was 25, 30 kids that started the mile swim, and, I'm the only one that finished it, but my body paid a price for it because that long of time in open water just dropped my body temperature. It was really hard for me to get my temperature back up. Not even blankets, sleeping bag, anything would
Yeah, yeah.
break that chill until I actually started consuming hot chocolate, and then I could warm up from the inside out.
Yeah, exactly. There you go, inside out healing, yeah. So we used to go with our pop-up tent trailer all over the country, behind our minivan, and so we went down to Texas, and it was in the wintertime. It got really cold where we were, and I thought, "This is really neat. I got some of the warmest sleeping bags available, and I'm just gonna sleep outside in these warm bags, and it's gonna be great." And it was so cold, I slept in the bags. I woke up in the morning, and I'm like, God, I am so cold. And so I stood up to get out of the trailer to go inside and get some heat, and I just, bam, fell right over. I had the worst vertigo. And, there's an example of, pushing your body too far, and the body needs time to heal. And it took me 3 weeks before that vertigo sensation was gone. I had to be really careful every time I stood up. And once I stood up and I got my bearings, I was okay. But that was a mess. So what you're describing is that we can push the body too far, but then it's like an animal in the wild. An animal in the wild gets in a fight with another animal and they get hurt. They crawl away and go to a place where they can heal through rest. So rest is important. But on the other hand, as I talked about my arm being stuck, motion is important too. Motion that we can do. So I work with people in that sense as well, helping people figure out what they can do during recovery that they wouldn't have thought to do, or somebody else might not have told them that they could do.
So what do you think changes first in the body when the nervous system begins to feel safe again? What is that change that's taking place?
I related to the way of being. I mean, nobody else probably would, but I related to the way of being. When we're being relaxed, we're being peaceful, we're being calm, then the body can naturally, that's the formula for parasympathetic vagal nerve activation, which
And
activation.
when that I just think so you talked about earlier, and we talked about how, some of the things that happen when that fear is locked in, the cortisol, the adrenaline overload, and all those other things. When you get into that vagal stimulation and other part, do you have a feel for what's chemically or physiological happening in the body? I know there's things called like heat shock proteins that repair it. What's being released? Is it
it's
With all your studying, you haven't named this thing as the Levine syndrome, and
yeah, the thing is that it's not. It's look. It's I can take somebody who's in traumatized fight or flight, and they
yeah,
show up, and I can have them within minutes into vagal tone. The vagal system, the acetylcholine coming out of the vagal nerve, and other parasympathetic nerves. They start to release the epinephrine, the adrenaline calms right down, and so the shift is fast. So to me, I want to get that result really quickly. I don't want to take a lot of time. And so sometimes it's guided meditation. I'll do a quickie 5-minute guided meditation to have somebody calm down and relax and get peaceful. And how do you feel? Oh, yeah, this is nice. Thank you very much. And they feel wonderful. So, I mean, it's all about neurotransmitter balance when the neurotransmitters are at the effect of the way of being that's expressed. To me, the beginning point is always the way of being, and then the mind's generating a way of being that the brain is responding to, and then the parasympathetic nervous system balance is a result of the mind telling the brain this is what's going on. Like, I'm scared, this is terrible. I'm focused on past trauma. It happened 20 years ago. I'm still focused on it. It hurts. I just want to get rid of it. What I resist persists, so I'm resisting it by want to get rid of it, want to push it back, and it persists around. So we have to break through that whole where's the focus and why are you still focused? I'll tell you a quickie story. It's actually what the story that I posted in the Wellness Wave Club, the Inner Circle. I posted a story about a client that I had where she came to see me with chronic low back pain. Um, and so I said, okay, let's, just how long you had it. And she told me her history, and she's seen everybody under the sun pretty much, except for me. She hadn't seen me yet, but she saw everybody else. And I love it when people say that. I said, really? You've seen everybody, done everything? So I said, okay, just let me just stand up, and I want to put my hand on and just feel because I always feel like, what's the status of the neuromusculature in the area? She says, oh no, you're not touching my back. I said, well, why not? She goes, I don't let anybody touch my back. Everybody who's touched my back, no matter what kind of practitioner I went to, has made the pain worse. Nobody has ever helped. So I don't let anybody touch my back. So I knew that there was a trust issue here for sure. And I needed to build the trust really fast, like within a minute or so, and have her allow me to do my work or not. So I said, look, if I can't put my hands on your back area, I probably can't help you fast anyway. So I promise you, how about if I promise you, I touched another part of her body. So I want to touch you this hard, which is like nothing. There's maybe like a quarter of a pound of pressure there. I said, if I touch you like that on your back, and I promise it's not going to hurt you, would that be okay? She thought about, okay, you can do that. So I put my hand on her shoulder, and I had her locate the pain point. Where is the pain point? Direct me. A little bit lower, a little bit to the right. It was midline. And she's, that's the point. You're right on it. And I'm just touching it very lightly. So I said, okay, I'm just going to push in just a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit. I want you to tell me what you experience as I just push in a little bit. Is that okay? Can you tell me what you experience? And she says, okay. So I pushed in, instead of a quarter pound, I pushed in about a pound. And she collapsed right there. She just collapsed. And I grabbed her. I said, and I knew that she was like somewhere else. Her mind was focused on some other past event that happened. And I said, so I just, I did what I do with people, well, where are you? What's happening? Tell me what's going on. Okay, I'm in the operating room. She was in the operating room. I'm hearing all the doctors are telling me my babies might not make it. I had twins, and it was a problem delivery from the beginning. And, I'm so scared for my kids. And so I got it then. That was 3 years ago. And I said to her, how are your kids now? Tell me about your kids now. Are they healthy? Are they okay? And she smiled, and she started telling me about her kids. And as she started telling me about her kids, the strength came back in her body, and she was able to stand up. And so after she told me about her kids, I said, do you think it's time that you can actually let go of the fear that you had back then because your kids are good now? Is that okay to let go of that fear? She says, yeah, it's okay. I can let it go now. I said, oh, fantastic. That's wonderful. Let's just look at your back and see what's going on. I'm pushing all over her back, and there's nothing, no pain, zero pain, no, nothing, no, so anyway, That's an example of how, and I have several stories like that. People have trauma trapped in tissue and it needs to be released. And the question is, how do we release it?
So
So
some people, they just like your person there, when they get that release, fine, they pop up and they're done immediately. Others, they get that release and it still takes them a while before they feel great.
not
How,
released. It's not
I'm
released.
not,
It's not released. Listen,
so well,
as soon
so
as, yeah, okay, go
let me
ahead.
let me ask you this, and this might get into your standard, which is good. You got your formula that you've worked out over years. So how do you strengthen that future vision if that's what it takes? Then how do you strengthen that response to being released to them? So
Great question. Great
so that
question.
it happens
Really
faster.
great question. All right. So if somebody is stuck looking at the past and the past trauma, and in this case, this woman didn't even know she was doing it. She just
Mhm.
gave her the back pain because the trauma was trapped in there and had never been released. Once somebody gets released from trauma, they are free in that moment. It happens so quickly. Now, can they experience the effect of that past trauma again? Yes, they can. And then they have to know that that's happening. Oh, I'm not free from that past trauma right now. I need to interrupt that. That's an automatic pattern that somebody has from their past because all automatic patterns reside in their past. So the automatic pattern is kicking in, and I teach people how to recognize the pattern as it comes up. And then I teach them how to quickly interrupt it. Then they're free again. And then they're free and they're free and they're free. It comes up. Oh, and it's really a question of how fast can somebody interrupt the pattern. So I always tell people, look, if you're subjected to your automatic pattern that you don't want to be subjected to, it's an unwanted automatic pattern, and you're subjected to it for 120 times in a day, and you can interrupt that pattern in 2 seconds each time. That means you'll be in the unwanted automatic pattern for 240 seconds, which is 4 minutes. So you'll spend 4 minutes a day in the unwanted automatic pattern. The rest of the time you're free, and it's awesome. The people love that, and they can easily learn how to do that. It's not challenging. It's really not.
So if healing depends on the internal state of the body, in our next segment we want to talk about how to shift your body into that healing state. If it depends on that internal state, and the most powerful intervention is not adding another tool, is what you're saying. It's changing that state that
Yeah, it
you're in.
depends. Yeah, well, you use tools to help the state change.
Right. Okay.
Guided meditation is a tool that I use, which can help. There's neuromuscular
So Bob,
re-education.
what is guided
Yeah.
meditation?
Walk us through that.
Okay, so meditation in general is when people are quietly existing and it's either guided or unguided. Unguided means I'm quietly sitting and I'm left to my own devices. I can think about whatever I want to think about. A lot of people want to quiet their minds when they're meditating without any guide. I believe that what's the fastest, best way to accomplish meditation is through guided meditation. You have a guide, you have a voice, there's language input, there's specific language that, what we've been doing on this podcast is talking in language. So all the language that I've used is some of the language that would be used in guided meditation to help people recognize patterns, interrupt patterns, be free of patterns, true future vision, visualize, what they really truly want, even if they don't know how to get there. All of those, all of the language that we just spoke about would be language that could be used in a guided meditation that would be incredibly effective for people. So that's meditation. Unguided, you're by yourself. People love that too. They use it. They'll do unguided meditation and they'll journal afterwards, what they notice for themselves. The thing about unguided meditation is we're left to our own devices. Our automatic patterns are not necessarily challenged, they're not revealed necessarily. So life reveals our automatic patterns. And so that's why it's important for people to understand what an automatic pattern is. It's something that's unwanted from the past. You could call it trauma. I just call it some past circumstance that happened. And our interpretation is that was a troubling experience. That's our interpretation. It's not like we have to change our interpretation, which we could do, because sometimes that's appropriate. Hey, I could forgive that person. That's a different interpretation than that person's a jerk. That person who did that to me is a jerk, and I'll never forgive them. Versus wow, man, I could forgive that person and get them out, and they're gone from my mind. Forgiveness but people don't realize being forgiving is a self-nurturing process. We forgive for ourselves first. In fact, everything we do is for ourselves first. We're being accepting of ourselves first so we can be accepting of others. We're being forgiving of ourselves first so we can be forgiving of others. We're being loving of ourselves first. These are all ways of being, by the way. And with a way of being, you can tell automatically what way of being somebody's expressing. You can tell when somebody's being angry, irritated, frustrated, unsure, doubtful, afraid, loving, forgiving, relaxed, peaceful. We can tell that like that. But people aren't trained to sense their own way of being. So what I'm saying is that the way of being is driving from the subconscious mind, by the way. It's all ways of being are in the subconscious mind. They all come from the past, and then they express in the present. And it's up to us as individuals to recognize that and then discover some tool to interrupt it fast so that we're free. And that's the kind of freedom that most people really haven't experienced.
So now we've talked a lot here, Dan, made some parallel path into things like when I mentioned the gut issue or something of that nature. But we've talked a lot about the muscular pain and joint pain, things of that type. Because Bob doesn't like me to say things of that nature. So we say don't say things of that substance things of that type in this particular instance.
Same thing, Jim. Same thing. But it's a nice variation. Nice variation.
I gotta vary a little bit. But standard American thought and thought in other places, it's okay, I smoked that cigarette and that's what caused cancer. It was I ate too much processed food and that's what caused the colorectal cancer.
Those are all factors.
Do you think these things that we've talked about today, your way of being, your way of thinking, do you think those play a role in these other conditions? Tumor growth, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis. Do they apply there, do you think, Bob?
Sure. I mean, I think they definitely apply. And yet everything is there are many factors though. It's not I mean, the way of being drives thinking, drives actions, produces results. So if we're getting the wrong result in our future that we don't want to have, we got to look back at who were we being along the way that caused us to take those actions. So that's a factor. It's a worthwhile one that most people don't teach. But then there's nutrition, there's toxins, there's all kind of air pollution, water pollution, pharmaceuticals in the water supply, fluoride, which we're finding out now lowers IQ on everybody. It's just, there's so many things that
Yeah,
there's so
just
much.
think what Dr. Bob could have been if he hadn't had fluoride
I
in his
know. He'd
kill.
be
Right.
I
so
would be,
brilliant.
it would have been awesome. It would have been great. Yeah. But I probably drank a lot of tap water when the fluoride
So,
was in it.
Dr. Bob, for our listeners today that feel like they're just in survival mode and they may want to reach out, what's the best way for some of our listeners to reach you?
I have a calendar that they can get on. They can request a free consultation if they go to drbobhealth.com, drbobhealth.com. That's a nice, easy way to get my calendar. And also there's the website, drbobLevine.com, drbobLevine.com. That's another easy thing to do. And I didn't even get a chance to talk about financial stress. That may be a combination for a conversation for another time.
Yes, combination for another time.
Yeah.
A conversation for another time, yeah. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's the way to drbobhealth.com. I do consults for people. I love to talk to people about their situations. I give them advice and strategies and pathways, and if I can help them, if they want to engage with me, they can. If I don't think I can, I'll make recommendations.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today, Dr. Bob. And healing is not just about what you're taking or what you try, but it's about whether or not your body believes that it's in a safe enough place to heal as well. So if progress is stalled for you and your listener, your next move may be, not just an alternative treatment, but allow your body to be allowed to have that healing happen. So if this has kind of changed your thought process on pain and recovery, stay connected with us through the Wellness Wave Club YouTube channel. And you can also connect with us through the Wellness Circle on Facebook. That story that Dr. Bob told us is up there on that Wellness Circle Facebook group. We'll leave those links in the show notes for you. And until next time, everyone, stay curious, stay empowered, and remember, wellness, it's in you.